Nicola, and it's going to be called CTC Vimeo, BBC One. All right. Boom. Mia, I'm sending it to you.
My name is Nicola Daniels. Please call me Nikki. I'm the registrar for the Women Institute, and it's my great pleasure tonight to be hosting this webinar. And I'm not going to be doing much talking, though. I'm going to be handing over soon to Mayor Mansouri from the Children's Theatre Company. We also have with us Nancy Nelson Ewing from the Children's Theatre Company. And we have Nia Fraser, who is a young actress, who also is working with the Children's Theatre Company and has been with them since she was 6 years old. You'll learn more about her journey. So welcome, everyone. We see more people still coming into the room, but we're going to start in a sec. I have to say, the first thing I said to myself when I saw the bios of these first two ladies you'll be hearing from, Mayor and Nancy, I was like, okay, I'm in the same room? No, please let me run and hide. You know, they've had so many awards, so many accolades, worked with people from all over, and the great work that they're doing also in places like Flint, Michigan, which you'll hear about. It's just beyond words. So most of you who are here will have seen and been attracted to their faces and their bios. So I'm not going to read their whole bios. But I'm just wanting to say that we're so happy that you're here. And one of the things that we'll be sharing also is this is going to be an interactive experience. We have some statements which we want you to consider. And Mayor will be introducing those a bit later. And really, we want you to think of yourself as being in an audience and us being on stage and you thinking, okay, well, maybe I will come on stage for a second because I have something I want to say and we want to hear what you have to say. So in a minute, you're going to hear what some of those statements are. You're going to be able to give your opinion on it. Yes, no, maybe. And we're going to have some great discussion. And so really, without further ado, the next thing I want to do is to show you a video. This is a video that is a testimonial to a production which you're hearing more about, the Henry Box Brown musical. And it is about 3.5 minutes long. So in a sec, I'm going to share my screen so you can see this video.
How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now we need to bring our communities, our colleges, our schools, our cities, north, south, east, and west. We need to come together. We need to have this conversation. All of God's children need to hold on.
I could not help when I was sitting there to have tears in my eyes and to reclaim my own heritage, given the fact that I was born in Savannah, Georgia, and my great-grandparents were slaves.
Truth has been hidden for so long, and I trust that the state that we're in right now, people are looking for truth, they're looking for hope, they're looking for peace, they're looking for real love.
It was cruel how the slaves had to be taken away, how Henry had to get taken away from his mother and his sisters and all his siblings and everybody.
For the ones that are from the north and the young children, it's so powerful for them to really see and understand some of the issues that had taken place. Just the idea of what people actually went through on both sides of the fence.
And then you get the white folks who are coming out and you're going, oh my gosh, I don't want to be like that. Those were probably my ancestors. And now what do I have? What do I do now? In the middle of the play, there was a point where Henry goes to the shop owner.
I will help you to your freedom, Henry. And you will help me to mine.
Your freedom, sir.
Not all bondage is in chains.
Hold on. Just a little while.
I would recommend it. It's awesome.
They don't understand what it actually means, but after seeing this play, you understand what slavery was and how hard it was for people.
Thought-provoking, influential, a worthwhile experience.
Gave me a perspective on, how racism still affects America now. What can I do to change it?
Wish I could share all that is, all the love that's in my heart. Remove the hate, the pain and fear.
And just hearing that music just touched my heart, and it came. Everything came together. The understanding, the pain and suffering became even more real.
I cried. I had a bunch of connections with all of those people there. I think if everybody came and saw this, there wouldn't be any racism. Like, it could totally change everything.
I was speechless. I shed some tears.
Okay, so now we have Mayor Mansouri, the artistic director of the award-winning Children's Theater Company of New York. And I think she's going to introduce to us our first poll.
Oh, do I get to introduce the first poll?
Yes, you do. The first poll. And I don't want to give it away because Nia's going to share that slide for us.
Yeah, it's a speaker. I wonder if you can play through that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What is that background
I
noise?
think we got a bundle down here.
We got a bundle?
I think. I don't know.
Like hacked? That was weird. Hello, everyone. Talk about capacity building. We are so excited to be with you, and we are feeling like all those accolades are great, but this wonderful new world we're in, we're developing a whole new lot of capacity right here, right now. to feel that we've gone from theater to this experience of trying to engage with you. So it's a pleasure, it's an honor, and it's definitely a learning experience. What you're seeing on your screen is what we consider a values-based audience engagement, parent engagement, community engagement exercise. We call it the yes, no, maybe game. And for us, this idea of theater as a tool for moral reasoning starts with no answers, but maybe some of the questions, in this case, some statements that may seem easy. So we'd like you to think about them and really just respond with the chat feature of your Zoom and indicate yes, no, maybe, and hopefully a dignified reason why. In a normal, wonderful world, when we get to be with you, we find that to create a theater as a tool for moral reasoning, you have to really create a safe space for that meaningful conversation to happen. And to be able to give people safety in numbers is one way we do that. So this would be a great opportunity not to have an open mic discussion for sometimes wounds we open and don't know how to close, but an opportunity to ask you to take a position in your breakout room or on stage and go to the yeses or the nos or the maybes and have a group discussion about it. So, but here online, we want to hear your thoughts. So justice is greater than mercy is our first brain teaser for you. And in a normal, wonderful world, we would get to hear your voices and hopefully listen to other people's voices. And in that exchange, some magic happens. So I won't give away the magic, but hope to hear from you. Is that a good start for us, Nikki?
That's a wonderful start. So everyone is seeing the poll now. You should be seeing it. The panelists also can answer this poll. And it's very simple. Justice is greater than mercy. Yes, no, or maybe. So far, we have 50% of people have voted from the room.
And I see it on my screen. Do I get to vote too?
Yes, you can vote too.
All right. I'm sending my submit. And I don't know how you write your response in words, but maybe you guys are smarter than me on this stuff.
Yes. If you want to elaborate on your answer, you can go into the Q&A box.
Okay.
Yes. Someone said their poll disappeared. What you can try to do is to maximize your Zoom screen, especially if you're on an iPad or a smartphone. If you're not maximized, then the poll might not appear.
All right. So justice is greater than mercy. I'm going to hold the talk to see if we have some responses and if it's coming in. And while you're doing that, I got to tell you that trailer you just saw was the great medleys of Negro spirituals that Eric Dozier, a favorite friend of a few of ours, helped us create. And my great co-composer, Frank Sanchez, who helped us write original songs, that some of which were snippets in there. And the great, wonderful Baha'i composer and a very popular composer in the television and film world, Jack Lenz, who helped orchestrate much of that, what you saw. So I'm just killing time. Is that good, Nikki?
Okay, well, we have 83%. Not everybody has voted, but I'm going to end the polling now. So go. And I'm going to share the results. Believe it or not, 44% says yes and 44% says maybe.
Amazing.
And 12% says no. So that should be an interesting room to discuss that.
It was in a safe, wonderful space where I could see all of you. We would do no talking. We would facilitate your voices. And our goal would be to really be able to just not create a debate, but to really listen. And I want to share this magic with you because it's amazing how much you think these statements are obvious and how much layer is beneath each one and what it really means to people of different backgrounds, cultures, ethnicity, experiences. So is that a good segue for me, Nikki? Can I move?
Yes, please. Mary's going to tell us now about
8:42. I'm timing myself. You know, with theater, people have to keep the timer going. So I wanted to do something a little different because the name of this talk is so grandiose. I hope you weren't rolling your eyes at some pretentiousness about it. But theater as a tool for moral reasoning really goes to the spirit of why the Children's Theater was founded in the first place. And as part of our vision statement, which is kind of like the world view, why? You know, we've always, our inspiration has come from the Children's Theater has a social justice imperative at its core, and that we're committed to theater making that intentionally builds inclusive, empowered communities. And the program cultivates an understanding of personal, cultural, and spiritual forces that shape society. So all that sounds really big. Our ultimate goal is to create musical experiences that explore the theater's power to impact diversity, to impact the development of empathy and compassion. So hold on to those two words, empathy and compassion for the human condition. And for me, which is, I get to throw my personal feeling in this, is to really learn from lives we've never lived. And if I feel like when we can do that, we've really done something special. And that's where we've had this incredible permission and trust of children and youth and parents. So today I wanted to just kind of go behind this idea of theater as a tool for moral reasoning and what it really has, where has it all started? We certainly didn't create that idea. And we actually believe that a theater and its roots come from this idea of reasoning and thinking and exchanging and listening. We often think of theater in the most cliche sense of it as an ornamental trophy for the haves and or a condescending handout for the have-nots. And I'm sure that some of us come from communities where we've spent more money on the chandeliers than we have on the arts. I wish I could see you chuckling. I hope you're not feeling a cynical idea from me. But really, we've noticed that the arts have also been a footnote before the snacks were served. And we as theater practitioners, we believe that theater is not an ornamental add-on for the elegant life. We think theater is the capacity for wonder, the language of compassion. It is the expression of beauty, and theater is sweat. It is muscle. It is real and it's concrete. So it's not hoity-toity, iffy-wiffy, ideas, that are coming out of the world of creators. And so our CTC vision, which really started over 19 years ago now, is looking at the interaction between the past and the present and tradition and experience in the shaping of conscience in our young people and our own consciousness, our own cultural identity, and our own worldview. So again, peeling back to where did the roots of all this come from, and this idea of moral reasoning. I, started to just do a little bit of research. This is not deep. I don't have a degree in this particular area, but we really discovered how theater and democracy evolved at the same time.
Okay.
That indeed democracy began as theater began. And society and civilizations are built on this idea of the exchange that came about through theater. So if we look very briefly at the foundation of democracy, and I want to give not a footnote, but a centerpiece note that, the Egyptian influence on Greek academia is so apparent that it is highly likely that Greeks learned theater traditions from their Egyptian teachers. So let's not forget the cradle of civilization is Africa. But what we do know is that so much of that learning was ascribed and prescribed from one country to another and back to the ancient Greece before there even was democracy. If you look closely at the chain of events, you'll find that theater gave birth to democracy. And democracy, what is it other than bringing in people to listen to that lives that we've never lived? That, in fact, democracy and theater are inextricably bound. So for most of the 6th century, believe it or not, BC, Athens was a city-state divided among 4 warring tribes, clan conflicts, and resulting in a series of strong men coming to power. And for around 534 BC, a general named Pisidius Stratus rose to power, and he got tired of the divisions among his fellow citizens. So he invented, or he introduced the idea of the annual theater festival, which had been introduced in Egypt way before him. And with this idea of an annual theater festival, all theater activity came together at a single place, and 4 tribes came into one common space and shared a common experience. And the result was nothing short of revolutionary, where Sophocles and the Sophocles and the Euripides, all these plays were written during that period, and these playwrights, and competed with each other at these annual festivals. So thus was the creation of democracy in theater. And what really was it? It was a participatory civic duty to see and to listen and hear the airing of multiple truths. So we don't want to be prescribed and passive in our approach, even with children's theater, where we present answers. We actually want to present questions, just as these statements are being presented to you, where we can hear each other and lean in and align ourselves with whatever view we have, but also in that activity of listening to develop empathetic muscles, which is much like working out in the gym. And in fact, there is a study done where the development of empathetic muscles, much like other muscles, causes a seismic psychic shift. And there's a quote from Oliver Wendell Holmes where he says, the mind, once expanded to the dimensions of larger ideas, never returns to its original size. So if we go to this theater experience and hear the multiple truths and develop those empathy muscles and develop compassion for the human condition, and as a result, dialogue, meaningful conversation replaces rhetoric, and compassion replaces the rush to judgment, and dialogue and empathy become inextricably linked. Mm-hmm. That's where we feel like theater has started to do that seismic shift. And so, we're able to sit with people whose voices, values, and lives are different than our own. And we're able to talk with, not just about the other. And we go to the theater and we become a better people. And it sounds really big and noble. And I know some of you out there are like, those are some big grandiose ideas and you need numbers and backup and data. I always listen to Dr. Joy DeGruy, who says some folks need, counting and measuring, which is fine. So in the world of a nonprofit, you got to be able to count and measure and explain everything in numbers, quantitative, qualitative. And so I studied some of the statistics, and this is my last bit, from the National Endowment for the Arts, which is the federal funding organization for many nonprofit arts organizations. And they looked at the at-risk youth in America. And their study proved that young people who had a high engagement and high participation in the arts versus low engagement and low participation in the arts, 74% of eighth graders who had a high involvement in the arts had better academic outcomes, higher career goals, civically engaged, were in social action, were into service, they volunteered, they voted, and planned to go to college, and were 3 times more likely to get an undergraduate degree than the ones who had low engagement in the arts. So there are some valuable statistics to consider. And with that boring look at history,
Mayor, I'm so glad that you said all that about the Greeks and the theater, because it's something that just came to me. I'll never forget, I was in a conference that was all about peace. And this university professor gave a talk about the role of literature, and specifically fiction, in increasing compassion. And they actually did studies where they had people reading stories, fiction books, and they tested them on their ability to recognize emotions in faces. That's how they did the numbers thing. And it was amazing because those who had read fiction versus those who read something else or didn't read, there was a statistical shift in their compassion as measured by them being able to see a face and say, this person is sad or this person is happy.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think
so much more for theater, which is storytelling, which is to me even more visceral. It gets you even more than reading a story.
Yeah. So. And it's coming through the unconscious mind, and you're shifting. In fact, in these yes, no, maybe games, we look at how when we just listen to people's stories, because that's what often happens, is you're actually listening to people's stories of why they think that justice is greater than mercy. And when you start listening to those stories, the seismic shift starts to happen.
Okay. So I think we're ready for the next poll. Do you want to introduce that one? Education is the answer to racism. So let's do this.
I love this one. Education is the answer to racism. I wish you could be in the halls and the rooms and the breakout sessions when there are people very emphatically on either side of this thing.
So many sides, yeah.
I should answer too.
Please.
Yeah, I'm gonna just break it up here.
I think there'll be less maybes this time, but we'll see.
Yeah, very interesting. Are we allowed to share what some folks have said in our past exchanges, or is that giving away the answer to the quiz?
Not now, later. Yes,
yeah.
Later. So we have 83% voted. That's about the same amount that voted last time, 85%, a little bit better. 87. Come on, let's see if we can get to 90. 89. Okay, we've gone 1 minute and we're at 91%. So I'm going to end the polling and share the results. And here we have it. So an overwhelming majority, 75% said yes, education is an answer to racism. 8% said no, and 18% said maybe. Okay.
If there was a large particular racial population, I'm starting to have like racial bias around this, but there are some vastly different responses from one group than another in America anyway. But by the way, I was 9 minutes, Nicola. Just want you to know.
Everybody give her a round of applause. Okay, and then now Nancy, I think you're gonna introduce.
Well, I would love to introduce Nancy to our beloved co-director, our director of education. Nancy is also one of the founding teaching artists of children's theater. She just, as she did today, she jumped off a bridge with me and just joined me in this completely make it as you go along. And she has published several plays, an award-winning playwright, and also virtues books and stories and music. And so incredible to have her on board with me. And she's come on this journey because I would dare say not go without her ever again. Go with that, man. Now it's you.
God. And see, I was going to make fun and tell everybody about when you first told me about this talk. I reverted back to my childhood Laurel and Hardy Saturday afternoon shows. And, you know, Laurel or Hardy always said, oh, this is another fine mess you've gotten me into.
Yeah, I'm good at that.
I am so happy that you did. And I have enjoyed every minute of it. It's been a wonderful growing experience for me. So thank you. And thank you, Nikki, for having us and asking us to be here.
Let's get Nia's slides going. Go to that first slide, Nia. Go ahead, Nan.
So I know you talked about the vision of children's theater, and we have it up here. So I'm just gonna, briefly talk about the fact that, we focus on social justice. That's the imperative. That's the core of the work that we do. That's kind of the vision that we have, and we're inspired to do this work. The method of this work that we got our inspiration from is a quote from Baha'u'llah, which is regard man as a mine rich in gems of inestimable value. And you all can read the rest of that. Education alone, that almost answers that question, cause it to reveal its treasures and enable mankind to benefit therefrom. And also the primary concern must be to build capacity. Right, that's something else that inspires us at Children's Theater Company. That's sort of our focus and our goal. And the mission is to utilize the power of theater as a tool for moral reasoning. And just hearing the history, Mayor, that you shared about the Egyptians and the Greeks and the elevated level that you brought to mind in telling us about that history, I think is so important because, people need to know the origins of this amazing art form, and that we are actually, we're coming full circle and we are embracing that legacy of how it all started, the origins of that, our ancient ancestors. And, creating this space for a tool of moral reasoning, it's like a community empowerment program through theater engagement. That's sort of another way to say that. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the application of that, and kind of break down that lofty, very cerebral sounding terminology. And essentially, we're using theater as the foundation for communication, for understanding. And we take a very multi-layered approach to that. But the first thing we have is the intention. What is our intention? And that really is community building. It's relationship development and capacity building. And we try and go into a community and understand, who it is that we're talking to. How do we get to know these people? How do we appeal to them? How do we understand them? And simply we start asking questions. We take assessments. We ask questions. What are their strengths? What can we do? How can we help? So it's very strength-based. We want to form real, genuine partnerships and collaboration, which is, one of the main characteristics of theater, to have collaborations. There's so many moving parts, in the theater world in and of itself, but we focus on that. We focus on the equal partnership and collaborating with the parents, the students that come into who come into our program, or when we go out into the community. We focus on making sure we are establishing genuine relationships with people. And one of the best ways to do that is just start talking and asking questions and have it be asset-based and based on the strength of the people in the community. And one of the biggest assets in a community are their people, really. And understanding that diversity is also a strength. We encourage different ethnicities and cultures, and that's all part of who we are as children's theater, to come together, and spiritual traditions as well. We want to be as inclusive as possible. We want people to come and feel comfortable. We want parents to know that it's okay to talk about your spiritual traditions. In fact, all of the productions that children's theater does, at the end of every production, the children actually memorize quotes from a variety of world religions on stage in public schools and private schools. They memorize these quotes, they take them home, parents see what we are offering, and it really is a wonderful thing to have that space, to have that level of inclusivity and comfort. And what we do, another way, is we have this holistic approach, in order to empower our students and our parents and ourselves. And we do that by recognizing everyone's nobility. And what do I mean by nobility? And when we talk about nobility, we talk about acknowledging one's natural abilities for good, what is innately in us all, what we are all endowed with. And we honor that. We honor that worth. And how do we do that? We do that by talking about those innate abilities, by talking about virtues, and reading about them and singing about them, and just learning what that is and mining those gems of inestimable value, right? And that's part of this holistic approach. Another thing that we do is we have an honor circle. After a day of rehearsing with our students, we all come together, cast, parents, crew. We sit in a circle. It's very casual. It's very family-like. And students acknowledge their peers, and parents acknowledge their children and other children. And it's a way of just really recognizing each other. And I tell you, there's nothing like being recognized, especially peer to peer. It's something that they saw demonstrated that day, an act of kindness, someone being particularly helpful and being recognized by that. So we have the honor circle as a very important part of our creating our space for moral reasoning. We also have Parent Cafe. Our parents are not bystanders. They're very involved in everything we do, and we engage them in conversation. Our plays, like Mayor said, I believe they have a social justice imperative. So we'll have theme-based conversations on whatever the play is that we are doing in a particular session. And we honor our parents' voices and opinions and perspectives. And it's another layer of relationship development and friendship and how, when you really are sitting and having these honest, challenging conversations, it also helps to get rid of preconceived ideas, our prejudices. We meet people and we size them up like that, and we think we know them, and we have a conversation in like this parent cafe, and we realize, this is not who I thought this person was. So it's really important that we do that. And in our questioning and finding out strengths of our parents, if parents can work on sets, can build sets, parents are building sets. If parents can make costumes, parents are making costumes. If they can make snacks or bring snacks or greet people at the door, we are involving our parents as much as we possibly can. And being family, that's one of the things that theater does almost instantly. When you're involved in any kind of production, there's like these whole family dynamics. And we also celebrate our students. We have graduation celebration ceremonies. Again, another layer of our holistic approach in creating that space for our moral reasoning.
I want to add a little one more thing, which was service. I mean, it's service, and
we do service. Part of all of that, because like I said, the layered approach, creating these minds for active thinking, for analytical thinking. One of the plays we do is the Lorax, and we're learning about the environment in the Lorax and global warming. And the students are, we engage them in real activities. We don't just sing and talk about it, but we really put them into communities and take action and create this culture of service that Mayor was just talking about. And it's all part of raising their consciousness and taking social action in their communities and in their school, and allowing that fuels the empowerment, right? When a children, when their minds are being expanded on real world issues, their family is coming to see them, their community is coming to see them, their teachers are coming to see them, classmates. It does so much for their esteem. And that is part of how they become voices of positive change. It is so transformative. When they go back into their communities, they're looked upon as, wow, they're really standing out. They're owning their empowerment. They're owning their leadership, and they're being recognized for it. And it's helping them to have this voice and to be agents of change. So, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the process and theater and all of that with our adult cast and Henry Box Brown in a minute. But right now I'm going to throw it back to Mayor, who actually tell us how this all came about to begin with. Mayor?
The Henry Box Brown project. I mean, the Children's Theater began.
Award-winning Henry Box Brown.
And I don't mind telling you that it's wonderful to have these poll statements given to you guys today. When we have an audience, we ask them to consider their thoughts in writing and sharing, as well as their pledge for action. And so the element which Nancy will address later on. And for me, when we started Children's Theater in 1988, and yes, I'm that old, it was a wonderful pledge that the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States put before a big youth conference in Indiana. Raise your hand if you went to that conference. And I pledged to start something that would involve the arts with a group of people that would let me fool around, and kids were the only ones who do that. And they sent that pledge back to me 5 months later, and I had to really grapple with my promise. So, but now the question of Henry Box Brown, I just want to share very briefly that, speaking of the only people that would allow me to fool around and entrusted their children to my care happened to be a very large African-American population in New York through an advanced outreach program for gifted kids of Black and Hispanic descent. And I happened to be their extra English teacher to kind of catch them up. And so I got to be part of a community of very motivated children and families. And they came on board with the experiment, and it's been 20 years. So you can imagine they've all grown up. And actually, this is a great moment, if I may embarrass Nia for a moment, to introduce a young person that walked into our lives when she was 6. And how Nancy was talking about ownership and empowerment. Hopefully, this is not just the story of so many youth and young people, but if I give you a little bit more on how the Henry Box Project, Nia, do you want to tell us how you got to be involved with children's theater and how you're not 16 anymore?
Sure. So hi everyone, my name is Nia, and I'm currently working with TTC in the communications department, but I'm also an alumni. I joined the Children's Theater Company when I was 6 years old. I'm 21 today, so it's been a while. Happy birthday, Nia! Yes, thanks. I turned 22 on Sunday, but I originally joined the company when I was in the 1st grade because my elementary school teacher didn't think I participated enough. I was really shy and I didn't like talking to people, so she recommended that I get involved in extracurriculars. And so one day we stumbled upon the Children's Theater Company by accident on a dress rehearsal day. And so we sat in the back, watched all the kids perform, and I told my mom that I wanted to come back, and I was a member for almost 10 years. And so being in CTC definitely helped in general for just being able to talk to others and express myself more vocally. I was constantly communicating with people who were my own age all day, every day. And it was a safe space. So I was able to still be silly and inquisitive, but not feel judged for it. So that definitely helped a lot in terms of coming out of my shell and just on the journey in general to opening up. And so Nancy mentioned the play The Lorax, which was actually the first play that I ever did with CTC. And so it was just so interesting because a lot of the topics, like she mentioned, are environmental awareness and consumerism and animal endangerment. And so I was 6 years old. Not many people were talking to me about these things at that age. But I think it was so important, especially now, given the world that I've inherited in my adulthood, to start the conversation early and just ask children how they feel about things because it's happening to them. And in turn, in their adulthood, they have to sort of, reap the repercussions of those actions. And so it was just nice to talk to other people my age about it, but also be able to reflect how I felt about the world around me in a creative way. And so I got a lot from my CTC experience. It's been so interesting and really gratifying to come back to CTC as an adult and sort of start my journey in my marketing career here. So it's just been really great.
She's working for us in our education department, and a couple of credits for Nia. She also got to speak at the United Nations, and this will segue me into the Henry Box development, but she was our first Henry's mother when we first looked at the opportunity to tell stories of the legacy of young African-American kids. And the way we came to this whole enterprise was after 15 years of doing wonderful stories about social imperatives. The young people who had grown up in front of us, like Nia, had asked us about musicals that was about them and their heritage and their story. And we were not able to look at American musical theater's established canon, the commercial theater. Kids were doing Les Miserables in every school in America. And I kept asking myself facetiously and seriously, where is the Les Mis of American history? There's plenty of miserable American history, and there's plenty of triumph of the human spirit. And why isn't anyone telling these great stories? And by the way, they're rooted in a culture of music. You don't have to create a musical. They are arguably the origins of great American music is in these incredible spirituals that we got to unearth. They're probably earthed every weekend in the church in America, but we got to put them in a place where their stories were being told as well. So we bumped into a children's book called the Henry's Freedom Box. And I thought, if it's good enough for a children's book, it's good enough for my secret group of kids over here in New York. And we adapted that children's book into a one-act musical using Henry Box Brown's own narrative. And what was eye-opening in discovering this narrative of this enslaved man of the 1850s was, as I tried to dig a little deeper, as I was trying to be some kind of an authentic curator of this experience that I'm a total visitor to. I'm from Iran. I was raised in England. I didn't even know enough about American history to understand why these chapters in American history were missing from their textbooks. But that's where really it was kind of a discovery to find out that even these slave narratives, these original testimonials, the original interviews with legit journalists, not fake news, where the government paid for the New Federalist writers to go to the last living enslaved populations and interview them verbatim with the most beautiful, deep, detailed, layered, and colorful language. They were really passed off as folklore in being shared with students, young people in the future, and they were considered not fact. And so they were kind of viewed as they relied on revisionist history, I suppose, at the end. So we thought it was a lost opportunity for our kids to not be able to see that interaction between the past and the present, and looking at oral histories as an authoritative source, not as a folklore. And ultimately, we recognize that whole groups and classes have been written off and written out of historical records. So I kind of got on a very self-righteous podium thinking, it just seems like theater should have a more profound role in restoring justice by not necessarily reenacting slavery, but being able to allow us to focus on the triumph of the human spirit and the capacity for human beings to transcend and the face of adversity. And so it was just a true honor and inspiration to see that we were able to resurrect the inner life of a people 200 years ago and realize that their struggles inextricably evoke our own very familiar and very damaged present. And that chokes me up every time because I can relate on so many other levels. And so really for us, it was like drawing out that African oral tradition in the way we started to tell the story and curate the musical, and really asking ourselves to watch, that recognize that our ancestors are watching us, that they continually call out to us and they present to us gifts of their wisdom, and that we have to bear witness to those warnings and inspire us to move. So this was the beginning of conversation with these young people. We created the musical because we thought that there was nothing about them in the mainstream world. And the adult cast came about because I needed African-American teaching artists to teach the musical, and not some Iranian girl who went on a renegade research to find out what's going on underneath this taboo. And so that's where we discovered this incredible church community who's been supporting us over the last 20 years. And they came and they helped take over these roles and helped me cast it. And it's been going on for several years before we got to go on a national tour and an international tour, and now some very wonderful recognition.
And Mayor, while we're still speaking of Henry Box Brown, I think we need to do the next poll, because the next poll says a bully must be stopped at all cost.
Yeah.
And to me, this is one of the most interesting statements. A bully must be stopped at all cost. Okay, so everybody is jumping on this statement. We have almost 50% already.
Wow.
I think some of the things you said really, spoke to people, Mayor and Nancy.
Yeah. Well, again, very eye-opening, this statement, when you present it to people of different experiences, especially people of color. I don't mean to develop a bias, but I can, not necessarily bias, but a kind of like, I start to anticipate some of the some of the experiences that people have had.
One of our attendees says, at all costs could be interpreted in different ways.
That's right. Good luck with the answer.
To just think about that.
Yeah, we've deliberately made it very easy because
that's the one that'll get you at all costs, and that's what we delve into. Like, what do you mean by that? All right.
Yeah.
You know, all cost.
So we have 85%. I think we can reach 90.
What is a bully exactly? I mean, there's bullyism.
Yeah. I mean,
well, I dare to say that you have bullies in all generations. You know, one thing I was thinking is the power of theater is its multi-generational approach. You know, when we were seeing those theater goers talking about Henry Box Brown, and there was old and there was young and there was in between. Everybody was there because the whole family is going to come out to see their children.
Right. And that's one way, you know, theater fosters community. You know, it just brings everyone together.
Yeah. Okay. So we seem to be stuck at 85%. I'm going to end polling in the interest of time and share these results with you. 72% said yes. 19% said maybe.
Wow.
And 9% said no.
Oh, it's incredible. How many in New York City? Maybe it's just New York thing. Most people.
We got some tough folks out there.
I mean,
stop them.
We presented this statement probably for over 4 or 5 years, but I would say for the most part, it is a no, not at all cost. No, we're not going to jail.
Not for a New Yorker.
Yeah. Them hung up at all costs. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah. But then, you know, I've seen like my Persian folks, they're like, yes, we need martyrs.
Okay, and one of our audience members says, today's bully is tomorrow's tyrant.
Wow.
Abdul Baha was the son of Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith. Abdul Baha said, not to be kind to tyrants. In fact, it is tough love that stops the bully and saves the child. Okay.
I remember being very eye-opened when someone says, and sometimes silence speaks louder than words. So there's ways to see.
Okay. So we're moving on. Are we ready for the last poll?
Yeah, so Nancy, would you just tell us a little bit about the process do you want to go to the poll now, Nikki?
No, it's up to you, Mayor.
Yeah. If it's okay, I mean, I don't want to lose our poll, but Nancy's going to tell us a little bit about the important journey of working through what is theater as a tool for moral reasoning, and very briefly, I mean, on working with this topic. This is some wounds we're opening, and it's really something to just kind of jump into musical theater and take it on the road and do a little dog and pony show. It's kind of scary. So if you can talk to us a little bit about this daring journey we're on. And
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you know, when I first came on board as the education director of education, and we were talking about Henry Box Brown and, you know, the actors, you know, that was one of the first things I thought as an actor, like, wow, this is really intense. This is, this subject matter is, it's an added layer of intensity. You know, as an actor, you know, you bring your emotions, you bring your toolbox with you. But because this is a subject matter that really has never been addressed on so many levels, and it is still impacting us today. You know, it's historical and it has immediate implications right now. You know, the fact that America was founded on slavery and this racist construct and all of that. And, you know, because we are actors, doesn't mean that we're not going to be impacted by it in a different kind of way. And this is for African-American actors and white actors alike. So, you know, this whole creative process to me is a spiritual one. And one of the things as actors that we have to be is vulnerable. And so if we're going to ask these actors to be vulnerable in dealing with this kind of material, we have to be very, very careful, very, very sensitive. We have to find a way to promote trust, because because we haven't really dealt with this subject matter, emotions can go in so many different directions. People can become angry and not even know why they might be angry with their counterpart. So we really approached it kind of methodical, we faced it head on. We wanted to make sure that we didn't re-injure our actors, especially our African-American actors, even though white people are impacted by race and racism in America, whether they even are aware of that or not. So like the flip side of the coin, but there's definitely injury on both sides. But for African Americans in particular to embrace these characters, to put on the robe of these characters and sort of reenact it, took us to a whole nother level. So one of the things that we did is we did start with education, and with it from a more cerebral perspective. Excuse me. And we found a myriad of resources, one of which was Dr. DeGroo's work on post-traumatic slave syndrome. And we had the cast, cast crew, read some of her work, read from that book. I would make copies of different chapters and have them read and then discuss. Also, Robin DiAngelo's book, White Fragility. We just, handed some of that material out. We talked about it. And during this whole time, actors were feeling a sense of relief and sense of understanding. They kind of knew, especially with Dr. Joy's book and post-traumatic slave syndrome and what that means for so many Black people. Whether you know what it means or not, as soon as you hear the title, it resonates with your DNA. And so we shared that. Tim Wise, White Like Me, How to Be an Anti-Racist. These are just some of the resources that we used for our educational component, so that we had a place to talk. We had something to refer to. We were able to have a real educated discussion, and people were shocked. People were surprised. People had no idea about the way this country started, especially the white actors. They really, and some of them didn't even know the concept of only one race. They really thought that there were lots of different races. So just being able to have these kinds of conversations were so impactful for these actors. And, it created a bonding with them as well. And then we did sort of a spiritual approach with meditations, guided meditations. And I remember asking people to bring things in that were inspirational to them, just little writings to bring and to share in a room. And one of the guided meditations, we just sort of unloaded everything. We took off all of our persona, all of the veils. We weren't Black, we weren't white, we weren't male or female, and tried to get down to just our purest essence in a room together, being these spirits that are in these bodies. And that was so moving. I mean, people were brought to tears, because it was such a wonderful spiritual experience for everybody, and feeling really connected in that moment. And we put our skin back on, and we put everything back on, but it was fitting just a little differently. It was we understood ourselves a little better after having that experience. So, we did that throughout the rehearsal process. We would rehearse, and then we'd have some meditation. We would come in one day and we would talk about some of the resources that were handed out. And there were some videos and all of these things. So this was like parallel work that we were doing that I think is necessary to do when you're dealing with this kind of subject matter. I remember when we first started, there were some actors who, were just, I'm an actor and I know how to deal with this kind of thing. But not really. And they all really showed so much gratitude and expressed so much gratitude for having done this work, even those that might have been a little resistant in the beginning. And even though, this story is a very triumphant story. It's a triumphant story of the spirit, but we do take that dark journey, and we take it with an audience. And it becomes part of this communal experience. So they're kind of going through their own thing too, the audience. And so we try and we have audience engagement, doing some of these statements like this after the show, because it really is it's an experience that, takes us to a place that a lot of us don't want to go, never been, but being able to then come and understand how we really are all in this together. It's such a beautiful experience, honestly. And one of the things we do is we just bring everybody together in song and voice, and we sing a Negro spiritual, This Little Light of Mine, just to kind of help, get us out of that emotional feeling that we're all having, and to hear all of the different voices together is wonderful. And then we do the DNA, and then we do these discussions, and we also let them know that this is not the end of any of this. When we go to these cities that we've been going to, like Savannah, that's just planting the seed, and Flint, Michigan, that's just planting the seed. We come back and we want to do more in-depth work with them. And that's all part of, doing those assessments in the beginning, making those relationships. That's all part of building capacity.
Nancy, can I add just a quick thing?
I'm sorry.
We're on our last minute, so if I can just throw one more quick add-on, that we are doing the 6-city tour. Our next one is Tennessee. The 6-city tour began in Flint, Michigan. I forgot to mention that this was all under the auspices of the Llewellyn Center for Learning. And thank God that we've been given this place to experiment and learn. And through the performance of Henry Box Brown and then Glimmerings of Hope, an entire superintendent of a school district of Flint allowed us to adopt the whole charter school, 900 students. We have a full-time resident teaching artist there on behalf of Children's Theater and the Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Program. And what Nancy was saying, just to really underline that we are not just taking a show on the road. We are being given this opportunity of a lifetime to come back to that community and help build up their own resources and, as we said, their own assets and their own strengths to build a community of whatever they want, but theater, of course, being one of them. So it's an audience engagement that we hope becomes a lifetime engagement and friendships. So, look out for us, hopefully, in a city near you. And I would really hope that if we're really true to our core beliefs here, that all of us in this audience today will also offer Nikki your pledges for action. And then we've really done something even today.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, I know we're on the hour now. We have another video to show you. And speaking of spirituals and music to uplift the audience, I would like to say that if the panelists can stay for a few more minutes, and if anybody does have questions, burning questions, we will take a couple questions if possible at the end of this. But so please stay while the music is going on. Just think about any questions.
This is our performance on the BBC in the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and we just
Okay, I'm going to share now.
Go for it.
This video.
Fascinating story. Many thanks to Merman Zuri, Najee Brown, and Paul G. Thank you very much to you guys. Henry Box Brown, A Musical Journey, is at the Gilded Balloon Paterhouse until the 26th of August, apart from the 12th and the 19th. And as I speak, some of the cast have appeared on stage to perform a number from the production. This is Amazing Grace. Hold on.
I want Jesus to walk with me. I want Jesus to walk with me. journey. Lord, I want Jesus to walk with me. When I'm troubled, Lord, walk with me. When I'm troubled, Lord, walk with me. Lord, when my head is bowed in sorrow, Lord, I want Jesus to walk with me.
You had to see the sea of white people over 40 from Europe watching that. I'm just so touched that they showed up. Really, I have to say, bless you. If you're out there, Europe, thank you for showing up, because we didn't think there would be a response. So thank you.
Yes. Someone has said a list of the books you used would be useful. So I don't know if that's something we can produce. We can add it to the page and share it with those who are interested. It sounds a lot like the reading list from our course on anti-Black racism in the U.S.
Yeah, I noticed it's coming up, right?
Those books for the actors, is that what they're talking about?
Yeah, you shared some books with the actors.
Oh, sure,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
Well, thank you for this incredible response. We're reading your texts and
yes, and so Valerie asked, how do you function in social distancing with the pandemic? I knew someone would ask that.
We just got a memo from the union. Believe it or not, this production is now a union production, which in itself is an amazing story of taking on the unions and like asking them to look at their unconscious, we think, bias. But yeah, they just sent me a big memo saying, like, we are going to play safety first. And when you are ready, give us your whole plan of like, how will you do dressing rooms? How will you do makeup before the session? How will audiences be seated? What kind of theater experiences? I'm thinking outdoor theater is going to be a big thing in the next couple of years or months. We don't know. We know what we are doing, and Flint is our commitment. Our 6-city tour was about doing a show and going back. And I have to tell you, those school kids in Flint that saw Henry Box Brown and then saw us come back with Glimmerings of Hope, and some of the same cast members were in it. Those children literally wept for 1 hour that we came back. I mean, this is the abandoned, poisoned city in America. Sorry to go political, but it's true and it's fact. And to be able to go back, and now with this whole thing, you know, the poverty is so concentrated and so insane that we really have to like reinvent ourselves. And so our last few weeks of all we've done is plan what we're calling living room theater, and offering we want those relationships to not go away. So we're like looking for ways to engage in the relationships with families and children, and doing it out of their living rooms, and having local teaching artists, Baha'is and Luhelen, show up and drop off materials, supplies, whatever they need, and just keep the engagement going.
Mm-hmm. I just want to clarify, Nikki, I don't know if that person thinks that we're doing our live theater now, because we're all in quarantine. We're all doing it from our homes. Yeah, the living room theater.
We're gonna get back on the road hopefully when we have some security, safety. But for now, we're good to connect to all the children and families and audiences that have already seen the show.
Well, I'm just glad that we were able to bring you to some people here with your ideas about moral reasoning and theater. I just wanted to highlight a couple of comments here, because the thing about justice really touched a lot of people. So I want to say, Julie said justice and mercy may be the same thing when justice means restoring people to a relation to their conscience.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I'm gonna copy and paste that one.
And then Arvid says justice is a long-term goal. In the meantime, I think we need mercy. In the US, issues are more intense and real. Here in Australia, these matters are less of a concern to society.
Incredible.
So
incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember one time we had a discussion where people were saying that you really can't have justice without mercy. You know, that was one thing that came up. It's like that it's innate in what justice is.
Someone wants to know, how does the living room theater work?
What we're inventing with our living room theater is absolutely making sure we are not entertaining them, and we're not singing to them, we're not acting for them, we're engaging, and it's student engagement and student outcomes. So the final result will be a blog, a website, or some kind of a online portfolio for every kid who sings in a self-tape, who writes a scene with their cousin or their neighbor or their sibling, and then acts that scene, whether they write something, act something, sing something, collage something, photograph something. We're going to collect this incredible response to the plays and the musicals. I don't know if you got to see the slides all to the end, but we have 15 one-act musicals that address all these wonderful social global issues, from the advancement of women to literacy, poverty, and abuse of power, Yertle the Turtle, human rights. So we'll look at each age group, and we don't want to put 10-year-olds and 5-year-olds in the same room, just as we wouldn't in our theater world. And with each group, we will really cater it to what their response would be to the material, and then have them go and self-tape and put it up and have a great portfolio at the end of this crisis, hopefully.
One of our attendees says, another one of these Wilmette gatherings to learn more would be great. I live on the West Coast and would love to get a children's theater happening here. So important and needed for young children and youth. So you have an invitation.
Get in touch with Cruz, and definitely we're coming to LA again. So hopefully.
Yes, definitely.
I'm not sure where in the West Coast, but.
Okay, that looks like this is more or less all of the questions. Someone asked, you were coming to Houston on your tour before the pandemic. What is happening to the tour? Waiting to see you and the play.
Oh, Houston. Yeah, I'm not sure if Houston's on the 6-city tour that the Lou Helen and the Office of Education and Schools has looked through. There's some criteria of receptivity that they're looking for. So for now, I know Tennessee, Boca Raton has a neighborhood called Pearl City, Dover, New Hampshire, Chicago, and Boston. And of course, we're going back to Flint.
Okay.
And LA's out there somewhere too, but
we were in Savannah. That was the other city.
Yeah, we just came from Savannah in February, and just like 5 days later, we were quarantined.
Thank you again so much, Nia. Thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing you in your next role. Please do keep in touch. Mayor, thank you. Nancy, thank you.
Thank you.
Please go to henrybroxbrownthemusical.com or Children's Theater Company, all 3 words.org. And please stay in touch with us. It's so amazing to see all of the folks from around the world on this thing.
I will have you back in a blink. We will. We love you.
We got to report to duty, man.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.